And welcome back to Press Pass. My guest is Thomas Reed, author of the new book, The Reagan Enigma, about the 40th president's politically formative years, particularly of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We're in the 60s now. Thomas Reed, so tell me, he gets invited to debate Bobby Kennedy. Tell me how that came about, and tell me about how this relationship really became pretty antagonistic.
It has basis in the early 60s when Mr. Bobby Kennedy became Attorney General. He was a very hard-edged politician. And once he was Attorney General, he pursued organized crime, but he also began to use the powers of office to harass the political opponents of the Kennedy family. In February of 1962, Kennedy's Justice Department hauls Ronald Reagan before a grand jury in Los Angeles to look into the activities of the Screen Actors Guild and their relationships with the agencies. 2 weeks later, after that interrogation, the Justice Department subpoenas Reagan's tax returns. That is bad enough in itself, but then 2 months after that, Reagan gets the word that his gig on the General Electric Theater has been canceled. He tells his son that I've talked to. He said, at a Sunday lunch, he said, "Michael, I lost my job today." That I learned that from Ralph Cordner, the chairman of General Electric, that Bobby Kennedy called and threatened contract cancellations if they don't get me off the air. Now, other writers have said the Screen Actors, the General Electric Theater was losing market share and so forth. But Reagan thought Kennedy called to get him to get
in his mind, he believed Bobby Kennedy cost him his job. Now, the debate, the infamous debate between Bobby Kennedy and Ronald Reagan, which, you know, if a time for choosing, the speech in '64 sort of put Ronald Reagan on the national map with conservatives, that the debate with Bobby Kennedy before '68, that in your book, you say that is what essentially convinced Reagan to give a presidential run a shot.
He absolutely did. It was called the Telstar debate. There was a satellite in the early days of satellites. Kennedy in the East, Reagan in California, students sitting in London asking questions about American foreign policy. Reagan studied for that as though it was a presidential debate. He was ready. Kennedy's staffers admitted that he didn't do much preparation. Reagan absolutely mopped the floor with Kennedy. It was a big triumph, but that wasn't enough. Not suddenly, but when it's 1968, Johnson's out and Kennedy is suddenly running for president, that was the trigger that really energized Reagan to say, here's a chance for settlement with Bobby Kennedy on the biggest stage in the world. And that's one of the key reasons why his '68 campaign really came to life.